Hey everyone, and welcome! Today, we're deconstructing one of the biggest shifts in cloud computing, and that's serverless. It's this idea that promises to let you focus purely on your code, not all the messy plumbing underneath. So, let's just dive right in and see how this all really works.
I mean, just stop and think about that question for a second. What if you could build an app that scales to millions of users, right? With amazing performance, super reliable, all without ever having to patch an OS, or guess your server capacity, or pay for a machine that's just sitting there doing nothing. Sounds a little too good to be true, doesn't it? Well, let's find out.
You know, before we can really appreciate just how revolutionary serverless is, we kind of have to understand the world it came from, the world of traditional infrastructure. And trust me, it was a world filled with some major headaches.
Yeah, this slide probably hits a little too close to home for a lot of you. In the old model, you were always playing this guessing game with capacity. If you guessed too low, your app would crash. If you guessed too high, you were just burning money. You were paying for servers 24/7, even at 3 in the morning when no one was on your site. And your teams? They were spending countless hours on maintenance, patching, updating, and desperately trying to plan for those sudden traffic spikes. It was just a constant, expensive grind.
So, out of all those challenges, a totally new way of thinking emerged. A way to build and run applications that just fundamentally changes the game. And that, right there, is the serverless revolution. Okay, so here's the most important point to get right away. Serverless doesn't mean there are no servers. Of course there are servers. The difference is you don't have to manage them. The cloud provider, they take care of all that underlying infrastructure. You're completely abstracted away from it, which frees you up to focus on what actually moves the needle, building awesome features for your users.
This table really just lays it all out, plain and simple. First, look at the cost. You go from paying for machines that are sitting idle to paying only for the exact compute time you use. It's a total game changer. Then there's scaling. It goes from being this complex manual process to something that's just automatic. 1,000 users, 1,000,000 users, the platform handles it. In operations, that whole grind of patching and updating, it's just gone.
So you might be asking, how do I actually build something with this? Well, you use a set of really powerful managed services that act like your serverless Lego blocks. Let's get into the core toolkit you're going to need.
So, at the very heart of serverless is this idea of functions as a service, and the classic example is AWS Lambda. Think of it like this. Instead of hiring a full-time employee, you have an entire army of on-call specialists. You just give them a piece of code, and that code only runs when a very specific event happens. You're not paying for them to sit around and wait. You only pay for the exact milliseconds they're actually working. It is ridiculously efficient.
Okay, next up. Every application needs a front door, right? That's Amazon API Gateway. It's basically the receptionist for your entire application. It manages every single incoming request, it handles security, traffic control, and it makes sure to route those requests to the right Lambda function to do the work. And the best part is, it's built to handle massive scale right out of the box. Of course, your app's got to store data somewhere. And for that, we have Amazon DynamoDB. Now, this is not your traditional rigid database. It's a NoSQL database, which means it's built for speed, flexibility, and just massive, massive scale. You can evolve your application without being locked into a strict schema. We're talking about consistent, single-digit millisecond response times, no matter how much data you're hammering it with.
And finally, for storing all your files, things like images, videos, your static website content, we have Amazon S3. For all intents and purposes, it is an infinitely scalable hard drive in the cloud. It's incredibly durable, and, as we're about to see, it becomes the foundation for so many serverless workflows.
Okay, theory is great, but let's put it all together. We've seen the individual tools. Now let's look at the blueprint and see how these pieces combine to build a real-world, globally scalable application. This is where the magic really happens.
So let's pretend we're building a site called myblog.com. Now, the key thing here is its usage pattern. It needs to scale globally for tons of readers, but new posts are only written every so often. This read-heavy, write-light pattern is an absolutely perfect candidate for a serverless architecture. All right, let's trace a super common workflow. A writer uploads a new photo for their blog. That upload, that simple act of creating a file in an S3 bucket, is an event. That event automatically and instantly triggers a specific Lambda function. The function wakes up, grabs the image, runs some code to resize it into a thumbnail, and saves that new thumbnail right back to S3. The whole thing happens in a flash, and you only paid for the fraction of a second that Lambda was running. No idle server, zero waste. It's beautiful.
Now let's look at it from the other side, from a reader's perspective. They go to myblog.com. All the static stuff, the HTML, the CSS, the images, get served up super fast directly from S3. But what about the dynamic parts, like loading the comments section? Well, that request goes to our front door, API gateway. It then triggers a Lambda function, which zips over to DynamoDB, grabs the comments, and sends them right back to the user's browser. It's a seamless, incredibly fast, and infinitely scalable experience.
So, let's just zoom out for a second and think about what this all really means. The move to serverless, it isn't just a new piece of technology. It's a whole new philosophy for building software. It's a future where your main focus is simply your code.
This quote just nails it. It perfectly captures the whole spirit of serverless. I mean, think about the competitive advantage you get when your absolute best engineers are no longer bogged down with maintaining infrastructure. They're free to experiment, to build, to deliver value to your customers way faster than ever before. This isn't just a tech shift. It's a massive business accelerator. It completely changes the economics of innovation.
And that really brings us to the final, and I think most important, question. When you free your team from that constant, day-to-day grind of managing infrastructure, you unlock so much potential. So I'll just leave you with this one thought. What amazing things could you build if you could just focus on the code? Thanks so much for joining me.